And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Stripe Dev Chats. My name is Cecil Phillip, developer advocate at Stripe. And today in our live stream, we're going to be talking about what are some of the new and cool things in the world of Stripe checkout and payment links. And my friend Jonathan here is going to tell us all about it. And Jonathan, I know you are not a stranger to the stream. You've been here before. But for folks
Right.
that may have not seen some of your previous appearances, why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So great to be back, Cecil. Thanks for having me. So I work at Stripe on the technical solutions engineering team, which is part of our user operations organization here. We help developers integrate with Stripe. So we help them kind of build their checkout integrations, accept payments with payment links, connect, billing, all that kind of stuff. We help users integrate with Stripe. So that's across a number of mediums, including our awesome Discord server. So if you are working with Stripe and you need help, jump on Discord, and myself or one of my colleagues on our team can help you.
Awesome. So it sounds like you get a lot of hands-on experience working with customers, right? Like you're not just creating stuff, but you're actually like helping people solve their problems and making sure that they have a smooth experience when they're integrating, Stripe into their workflows, right?
Absolutely. Our team is like probably it's a bit of a hybrid, right? We are
Mhm.
engineers by trade, but also we have very good soft skills in that we can talk to users and actually understand and empathize with kind of their points of friction when they're integrating with Stripe,
Mhm.
understand feedback and how to pass that, and then also kind of relay that internally so that we can action that and understand common pain points across Stripe and where we actually kind of need to improve the product or add new features and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of some of the stuff that we're here to show off today is a result of some of that feedback directly from users.
Awesome. So Jonathan, I mentioned before, you've been here before, right? Like not too long ago, actually probably a couple of months ago. So you and my teammate Matt did an episode on actually the same title, What's New in Checkout and Payment Links, but that was in August. So between now and August, I'm sure a lot of things have happened. But why don't we start today with just talking about, well, what are some of the things you covered in that particular episode?
Sure. So that was like Q3, right? And that was a pretty big quarter for checkout and payment links launches. We had the pricing table, which is our kind of no-code SaaS integration tool to kind of embed a pre-made pricing table in your site.
Mhm.
Um, we also covered kind of price localization with checkout, where checkout will automatically surface the presentment currency that's more specific to your customer, depending on the location. We also covered there's so much we covered. We also covered custom amounts of payment links,
Yeah.
which allows you to kind of send a payment link to a customer. You can define a specified range, and they can actually input a custom amount that they want to kind of pay, which is great for like donations and
Yeah.
things like that. I think there was one more. The actual last one was, and this was like a really big user request that we often heard a lot, and that was how can I start a trial with a checkout session, a subscription trial, without actually collecting any payment method details from customers. And that's now possible with checkout. And we kind of demonstrated that in the last stream. So if you want to catch up on any of that, obviously you can find the video on YouTube.
Right, right. And so for folks that are watching, I mean, so right now we're on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. If you want to see the recordings of Jonathan's episode and any of our other past Stripe Dev Chats, like he said, make sure you head over to Stripe Developers YouTube channel and you can see all of that cool, fun stuff. Now that we've covered that part, tell me about like the new stuff that's happened now, right? I can't believe we're talking about new stuff already, but obviously we're here to talk about some of the other advancements that have happened. So what do you have for us, Jonathan?
Right, man. Like you said, it was 3 months since our last stream, and
Mhm.
we had a whole bunch of stuff in that stream that was awesome and cool, and everyone's really excited to try out. And in
Mhm.
this stream, we've got like a whole bunch of other features that aren't as like big a headline. Well, maybe there's one that's a really big headline, but we got some like smaller, like real good um, improvements to already existing products and some kind of smaller features that you might not even know that you needed. So we're going to be kind of looking at some improvements to the pricing table.
Mhm.
We're going to be looking at how you can embed custom text on your checkout session.
Mhm.
Um, terms of service, consent collection for merchants as well, which is a big one. And probably the biggest today will be kind of looking at post-payment invoices for one-time payments with checkout.
Mhm.
And that's an ask that we hear all the time from merchants, especially those in kind of European locales. So how can I get an invoice from a checkout session for a payment? And the answer was you couldn't up until like real soon when this is going to launch. But I'm really excited to kind of show this off today.
Nice, let's do it. So I'm going to pull up your screen, and then
Okay.
why don't we start like going through some of these features? Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
nice.
Right. So your screen's up, and we're looking at the Stripe docs right now, right?
Right. Yeah. So we're looking at the Stripe docs for the pricing table. So as I said moments ago, pricing table is like a no-code solution that we launched last quarter. I believe it was in July. That essentially allowed users to kind of embed a web component inside their application, and it would kind of render this really beautiful pricing table. I'm sure, Cecil, as a developer, you've built a pricing table in the past. You will know
Many
how
times.
Yeah, you will know how agonizing they are to actually build. There's a lot of data there, right? To kind of not only pass but also render in a kind of really nice way that's going to convert, but also the actual logic to hook up the pricing table to actually, getting a payment or getting a customer to subscribe. So Stripe introduced the pricing table, which will kind of help alleviate a lot of those pains. And the pricing table was received so well on Twitter. Honestly, it's like probably one of the best launches that I can remember, like for real good feedback from developers. And it's been part of our kind of no code push over the past kind of 12 to 18 months, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But one common point of feedback that we heard like right out of the gate with pricing tables, like how can I add a custom call to action, right?
Right.
So if you embed a pricing table today, we've got an example one here. If you embed a pricing table today, what happens is these call to actions will kind of automatically trigger a checkout session. Those aren't configurable. So basically every kind of price that you set up in your pricing table will inherently create a checkout session with those configured parameters.
Mm-hmm.
But what we introduced just recently, the past couple of weeks, in fact, is the ability to add a custom call to action to your pricing tables. So this could be particularly prominent for things like custom pricing. For example, if you have a SaaS business where the pricing scales depending on the user's needs, like for enterprise needs, you kind of want to engage with that customer before they just sign up. You want to actually negotiate on a price. So you want them to contact you, right? Or you might have a high touch sales process as well, where there needs to be some engagement rather than just sending them to check out and expecting them to pay. So this is where the custom call to action button comes in. And like pricing table, this is only configurable via the dashboard right now. So what we'll do is we'll kind of jump into our dashboard. And as I already demonstrated, we have a pre-existing pricing table here that is configured with a couple of different products in Stripe, each with they both have 3 separate pricing intervals. So they all have a one-time pricing interval, a yearly pricing interval, and a monthly pricing interval. Now, what we're going to add is a custom call to action because we're going to introduce a new custom or enterprise kind of product or pricing tier, and we want to actually draw users to contact us rather than send them to checkout. So in the dashboard, on my pre-existing pricing table here, we can go ahead and edit this. So you'll see the UI here where we have our existing products, where we have basic and professional. We've got our 3 kind of pricing intervals that are available for each. And we can add up to 4 products, right? So I'm going to go ahead and add a new custom call to action button with a product here. So you can see automatically the preview updates to show us what the pricing table will look like based on the configuration.
Mm-hmm.
So I only have these 2 existing products which are in our pricing table. So I'm going to add a new one. I'm just going to call this Enterprise.
And I love how you could just add products right here in like this workflow. So I don't have to leave and go back to a different screen, add the product and come back. Like I'm in the space and it just makes it so much, so easy for us to do.
yeah, to be able to add both new products inline and prices inline without having to, like you say, go outside of the editor is really like a nice polishing touch, I would say, to the feature that makes it really frictionless to kind of get up and running.
Yeah.
So one of the kind of other real cool features of pricing tables that we surface like a feature list from your product. So we're just going to go ahead and just quickly populate some here just to show how this is working. So you get all the features that are in the other plan plus this extra feature, let's say. Now you can see that I haven't actually been able to specify a price, right? Because this is a product that will invoke a call to action rather than an actual checkout session. So we don't need to define an actual numeric value to the price. It's just a product. So we'll add the product here. And that's awkward.
That happens sometimes.
Oh, I knew this would happen. There we go. Lots of different accounts.
We didn't see anything. Don't know what you're talking about.
It's in post-production on that. Okay, so we've added our product. It's now added to our pricing table. And what you can see now is the product is here. We have the button text. We can actually customize this to a set of enumeration values that are available to us. We're going to go ahead and just leave this at contact time for this demonstration. And we want to add a link. And what we can do is, if we go back to the documentation here, the docs lists out what kind of links are supported. So we can use not only absolute web links like this, we can use relative links if you were redirecting to another page on your existing site. Or you can also use like a mail to or telephone number if you want to kind of trigger, if a user was on iOS on their phone and they wanted to trigger an actual call, you could do that as well. But what's really cool is that we've got these static variables that you can include in the URL. And what we'll do is actually, the pricing table will actually populate those variables with the values from the pricing table in your URL. So that's particularly helpful. For example, if I wanted to engage a contact us button, I probably want to capture the user's email, right? So I can actually reply to their request. So we'll go ahead and kind of demonstrate this. Just have this as stripe.com for now.
Mm-hmm.
Continue here. Don't actually need to make any changes here. These are the configuration for how the checkout session will be created for each price, but that's not particularly relevant for this custom call to action because we're not using checkout, so to speak.
Right.
So I've updated that there. And if we jump back now, and really one of the beauties of pricing table and the way that it's being architectured and built is that you can make changes to your pricing table and the changes will automatically be updated on any instance of that pricing table without you having to change any integration code.
Nice.
So as you can see, I refreshed the page there and we've got our new enterprise product available on all our kind of pricing intervals here at the top with our custom call to action. And what we're expecting here to happen is to be redirected. And there we go.
Nice. Now, and I can imagine customers can use that for, like you said, like so many different use cases. Like you said, like I want to add a particular new SKU to my product or a new element or whatever the case is. Or maybe for all of them, like I don't want you to just start the trial now, but maybe I want you to redirect you to like our sales folks. I want you to go talk to somebody or email someone. You know what I mean? Like we can kick off different workflows inside of the space, all depending on like, you know, whatever it is that your company is engaging in.
Yeah, there was a lot of merchants that were really excited about pricing table that wanted to use it right away, but they weren't. All of their sales process wasn't automated through Stripe. Like I said, there was a lot of high touch kind of manual sales negotiation elements that they needed to kind of engage with an actual human, and that wasn't possible with pricing table up until now. So this has got a lot more buy-in now from merchants because they can use pricing table to offer the kind of low touch via checkout and then the high touch stuff via custom CDA.
So here's a question I have for you then. Like, so if I can do those custom call to actions, and like you said, I can send them the links and email people or redirect them to a page or something like that. Can I kick off like a custom workflow? Like, will it trigger like a webhook? Can I run some custom code and maybe I do something else for these custom call to actions?
I think that's a great call out, and I think the way that you would kind of tackle that today would be to kind of redirect to the perhaps a page in your existing web app that would then invoke that custom kind of code or logic that you want.
Sure.
And there's no way to kind of tell Stripe, hey, run this function or hit this endpoint in my API. It's just we will redirect the users to this page or this URL, and then perhaps in that URL it triggers an API call to some external service.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that.
Yeah. So that's like the pricing table right now. Like I said, that's been a big request from a lot of merchants using pricing table. They wanted to be able to have a custom call to action. Another feature that I'm not going to cover in depth today, but previously when we launched pricing table only covered some very basic pricing models. Now it also supports tiered pricing. So if you have if your business is modeled around tiered pricing, then now you can adopt the pricing table as well. It will work.
Got it. Okay. And so these features that you're showing us right now, like these are live and ready to go today, or?
Yes, this is live. You can use this right now. Awesome. As I said, it's a dashboard. The pricing table is still only available via the dashboard, and there's no API for this yet. But yeah, you can go ahead and use the custom call to actions with your new or existing pricing tables just from the dashboard today.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. And so, like you showed us too, like there's also docs there, right? So like folks can also head over to the docs, and then we showed those. And so if you want to learn more about how pricing table works in general, but then also specifically these custom calls to actions, then they can definitely head over there and learn some more about it.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions in the chat, please do ask, and I will try my best to answer them.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so for folks that are watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and those types of places, again, like feel free to drop your questions inside of the comment box or in the live chat feed, depending on where you're watching us on. And yeah, we'll make sure we can get your questions to Jonathan and we can get them answered live on the screen.
Love questions.
We love questions.
Put me on the spot.
All right, so we saw custom calls to actions. What else do you have for us, Jonathan?
All right, so that covers the pricing table with custom call to actions. Now we're going to kind of dive to more checkout specific features. And firstly, we're going to look at kind of adding some custom text to our pricing, to our checkout session payment pages.
Okay.
So one thing that we heard from merchants was that they wanted to be able to add text to certain areas of the checkout page pertaining to certain information. So for example, they wanted to add details about shipping delays or shipping processing times or order processing times. Previously, prior to this feature, they would have had to include that perhaps prior to their redirecting to checkout or somewhere else in their website. They would have to kind of make note of that. There was no way to kind of control or add any custom text to checkout.
Yeah.
But that's possible. Again, this is a feature that's available today and is shipped just in the past couple of weeks. And I've got a demo I'd love to show you.
Yeah, let's do it. We love demos.
Yeah. So as you can see, this is available via this new custom text hash param, which is on the checkout session creation endpoint here. There are two sub hashes inside of the custom text. So you can inject custom text on your checkout page, but they are kind of in predefined areas on the checkout page, shall I say. So you'll notice that there's one for the shipping address. This will kind of appear alongside the shipping address fields. And then there's a submit hash as well, which will kind of appear above the payment button on the page. And inside of there, you just got this kind of message string, which just expects up to 500 characters in length.
Okay.
Yeah, but the quickest way to kind of show this is to just demonstrate. So threw together a demo real quick. So yeah, we can see what the API will look like if you were using TypeScript, Node.js. Yeah, so I've got these fields here. So I'm just going to add some kind of text. So yeah, shipping address. We might want to add a notification about processing times. It's Black Friday, right? It's Cyber Monday. we may be expecting a larger volume of orders, processing times may be impacted. So for these checkout sessions, I'm going to add just a note to say that we're expecting a slight delay on shipping processing.
Yeah, and like you said, that'd be a good. This like is a good feature, so you can add like those additional notifications or announcements or whatever the case is, to be like, hey, these things are in back order, or there might be shipping delays, or
yeah,
whatever custom announcements that you need to make. Like this would be a good place to be able to do those things.
Exactly, yeah. And these are configurable per session, so you don't set these on an account level basis.
Okay.
And these are, you would kind of have to pass these parameters in for each session. So that allows you the flexibility to kind of turn them on and off depending on a certain line item that you add into the checkout session or a certain price object that you're including.
Sure. So, and I can see these being like things that are attached to either like the metadata of products, if folks want to use that, or even maybe you could pull it out of a CMS, right? You might have a content management system where you're like, hey, I'm just going to pull the content, right? And then someone is centrally managing that somewhere else.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we've kind of populated these text areas here, and I built a demo that's just going to kind of create a checkout session and pass these values to the parameters that I've just shown you. We just quickly redirect here. And hopefully you can make that on the stream. I'll make this a little bigger. But you can see here we are collecting shipping address for this particular session. And beneath is the note I added that there may be a delay on processing times.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the kind of small thank you note there above the pay button.
Got it.
Yeah. So what will happen is, if I was to, you'll see that in this particular example, I'm passing this shipping address collection parameter. If I was to omit that parameter and try to pass in this shipping address custom text, the API would error. You can only pass shipping address custom text if you're collecting shipping address. If you're collecting a shipping address.
Got it. I guess that makes sense. Like in my head, I was thinking, oh, it would just not show because if the section is there, it would just not show. But I guess that makes sense. And so for folks that are using a feature, it's probably important that they test that out, right? So that they know, okay, hey, this is showing, but then when I toggle the feature, I'm going to get an error, and not a case of just the section just not being visible.
Absolutely, and this is like prior to this change, checkout was very kind of walled garden, right? Like Stripe, the page itself is very optimized to convert like visits into actual sales. We don't allow much control over it. You can customize the appearance of it. You can change colors, fonts, button shapes, that kind of stuff. And of course, now you can use custom domains. Well, overall, the layout and content on the page was largely kind of untouched. So this is the first time that we've kind of allowed people to actually kind of add custom content onto the page. So we were kind of a bit, it's still a bit like restricted, like as in that you can't ultimately determine where on the page that this text goes. And that's why the API shape is like this. Yeah. So that the parameters are very indicative of where this will appear on the page, right? I know that this shipping address message is going to probably appear close to the shipping address. Same for the submit button.
Got it. So like you said, we can create these labels. I guess we can't call them labels. We can create these custom text sections based on the section that we're in, right? So I know we can put them into the shipping area. You showed that we could also put it in like by the submit button. I'm guessing if I go to the docs, I can see like all of those different places that I could add custom text, right?
Yeah. So right now, those are the only two that are available.
Okay.
We kind of purposefully we're just kind of a bit limited about this because right now that those two kind of parameters fulfill the use cases that we were hearing from merchants. They wanted to kind of mention about shipping and processing times, and those two areas on the payment page made the most sense to kind of display that information. So that's why we kind of purposefully quite deliberate about those parameters and where they are on the page. But that's not to say that this won't change going forward. And obviously, the API is designed in a way that it can be expanded.
Right.
We can add other sections on the page that we could add custom text. I'm not saying that will happen, but in theory, that could happen.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, this is also one of those like quality of life features, right? Like when I say quality of life features, they're not like huge major changes or breaking changes, but then also sometimes like those little, like the small things matter, right? And like some of the times like that'll make the difference between a customer having like a good user experience, right? And a good visual experience and them not wanting to complete the checkout because they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, like I said at the start of the stream, a lot of the features that we're talking about today are kind of not necessarily big headline features, but they are kind of, like you said, kind of product quality features that enable merchants to kind of, who were a bit hesitant to like onboard or embrace checkout or adopt checkout because something was missing or they couldn't do it. They couldn't do something that they required as part of their kind of payment flow. And now we're adding those features to kind of slowly bring those merchants on board to check out another hosted kind of UIs that we've got.
Got it. Cool. All right. So we saw the custom text, and then we also saw some new features to the payments, the pricing table. All right. So what else we got, Jonathan?
Yeah. So another quality of life feature I would say in regards to checkout is this kind of terms of service explicit agreement. So prior to this, your terms of service was just shown on the checkout page, and it would be like, by kind of payment, you are opting into the terms of service, or you agree to the terms of service and the privacy policy. We heard feedback from merchants that said, hey, we need like explicit acceptance of these terms. We need to see like whether or not it was agreed by the customer before they click pay. So we decided to actually make this, add this configurable option. Again, it's on a per session basis, and it's available for merchants that need it. And if you don't need it, then you don't have to pass that parameter. But you can see basically in the top level consent collection parameter where we've added a terms of service param, which has, I believe, a couple of so content collection terms of service has a couple of enum values, required or none. So if the default is to none, but if you require it, then you need to pass that parameter when you create your checkout session. And what you'll get is you'll get this explicit checkbox that the customer has to kind of check before they can actually pay.
Gotcha. Nice.
And then that's reflected on the kind of resulting like any checkout session webhook events that you listen for, right? There will be a terms of service field on there, and you can see that will be set to accepted. So that is important, for your kind of legal or otherwise kind of requirements for your business, if you to know that the user explicitly opted into the terms of service.
So I have a question about that now.
Sure.
I have lots of questions about that, actually. So one, I think this is a good feature, right? Because I do agree that explicit consent is important. And I could see across like different types of business industries, like why they'd want to do that. As a customer, if I say I consent for this session, am I going to have to consent for every session that I do, or is the consent attached to the customer, or is it just attached to the session? And can I configure it to be one or the other?
Those are good questions. Yeah. So in this initial implementation, the consent is kind of restricted to that specific checkout session. It's not attached to the actual Stripe customer in any regard. So, for example, if this customer had one checkout session and then they had a follow-up subsequent checkout session, you would need to then, if required, you would need to then capture terms of service in that subsequent checkout session again.
Okay.
So it's scoped to the particular session, not actually the customer in this regard.
Okay. And then, so for folks that are watching now and then even later, I'm sure they might be wondering this too. So for one-time payments, I could see that, sure, like every time I consent. I'm going to assume it's the same thing whenever I do subscription. And when I say the same thing, like I'm gonna, when I confirm the subscription one time, like I don't have to do it for every month, right? It's just gonna say, hey, I consent, and the subscription itself, like the subscription consent, is gonna apply for like all of the subsequent payments that happen after that.
Exactly. It's the terms of service kind of acceptance or opt-in is not so much tied to an explicit payment. It's more just the payments that this session may incur. So, for example, like you said, a subscription is an ongoing kind of agreement. That terms of service will be explicit to this is an ongoing agreement kind of thing. So, so it's not so much tied to an individual payment, and there's no need for them to then have to capture terms of service for every subsequent recurring payment if it was a subscription.
Okay. One thing I like about that is I know sometimes when I have subscription services and things of that nature, that sometimes they update their terms of service, right? So like even though I have agreed to like a thing 5 months ago, maybe January of 2023, they're gonna update their policy and their terms of service, and then I get an email or I get some type of pop-up that does that. So in that scenario, can I don't know, require new validation? Again, so I have a subscription, right? You agreed to the original terms of service,
right?
But now they've changed, right? Like, can I trigger something that says like you have to accept this, or would that be a little bit more on the implementation side to like handle that scenario?
Yeah. So this initial kind of implementation of this doesn't account for any kind of circumstances of the terms changing and you require reacceptance.
Got it.
If they were to then, if you were, in your example, if you were to have like a merchant who required terms of service, they had a customer that consented to those terms of service and then had a subsequent session a year later and the terms had changed, they would again need opt-in or acceptance of those new terms. But it wouldn't be apparent unless you like explicitly clicked on the terms link and read through them all, if they were actually different or the date or something like that. So it's not the terms isn't like it's not kind of a finite, or it is a finite thing in that if the terms do change and your business requires your customers to kind of re-accept those terms, and you would have to kind of account for that outside of Stripe and checkout.
Sure. And I guess, and again, obviously developers have to work, right? Like we can't do everything for everybody. And so I'm assuming like even based on that, I can have some type of, flag or setting or some type of metadata in my own customer database that says, yes, you've accepted like the current terms of service, but then here's a new one. And then maybe I can now have like a running list attached to that customer of, hey, well, you accepted the old one, but you haven't accepted the new one. And in my UI, that's separate to Stripe, right? Like in my web UI or my mobile UI, I could say, hey, we have a new one. Could you please accept it? And then now on the back end, like I could deal with that in my customer database.
Yeah. So the way that I guess you could handle this would be, as I've highlighted here, is you should be subscribed to kind of checkout session completed events. So if you have a checkout session that requires terms of service acceptance, the checkout session completed event will contain this consent terms of service field and it'll say accepted. So I guess what you could do there is then in your webhook handler, you could say, this customer accepted the terms of service on this date being the kind of date the session was completed. And then you could persist that in your database alongside your users, as you said. And then if there were people that accepted terms prior to this date, then you could obviously prompt them for a new acceptance, like you were alluding to there, via whatever means you implement.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Make sense?
Yep. Yeah. That makes sense. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll just quickly show a demo here. So without the kind of terms of service, we just have a vanilla very vanilla checkout page here. I'm sure
Mhm.
anyone who's worked with Stripe has seen this before. No mention of no explicit terms is required here. If we go back, check this here to actually pass in the consent collection hash. We get this little checkbox down here. So if I just try and one passwords.
All right, so you fill this out. You get to do the magic 42, 42, 42. And
it's not my actual postal code.
well,
so
I mean, we
that,
welcome folks to try it out and see what happens.
Right. So you'll notice that I can't actually click pay until I agree to the terms. Now, if I agree here, then we can process as normal.
Yeah.
What you'll notice is go into our dashboard just quickly here and look at the event from that checkout session. We'll see the consent hash here, consent terms of service accepted. So that's the difference in a session that doesn't have terms of service acceptance and one that does.
Got it. Okay. Nice. I see in the consent hash objects right there, there is a promotions thing. Like, what is that for?
Yeah. Okay. So that's basically that is like part of checkout's kind of abandoned cart recovery thing.
Okay.
So checkout sessions are like short-lived, 24 hours by default, but they can be reduced to like an hour before they expire. And if you enable consent collection, that means we are going to kind of ask them if they consent to promotions, and that allows you to kind of then do cart recovery when those checkout sessions expire. This is covered down here. Yeah.
Got it.
So we're asking them to basically consent to any promotional material that we might send them. And then once you've consented for that promotional content, you can do that as part of your kind of abandoned cart recovery to kind of say, hey, you've left checkout. We're going to send you a 10% discount code if you come back now, and then initiate a new checkout session. If that makes sense.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So unless you have any more questions, Cecil, I can dive onto probably the most exciting feature today.
Yeah, those are all really great features. And I could see how not only these features, but the ones that you spoke about the last time could kind of come together to create like a really interesting experience. I'm really curious to see how like folks are using this and also how customers are using that, right? And like, and how they feel about like this developer experience.
Yeah, I think overall, especially with pricing table, there's a lot of excitement, and the developer experience has kind of been applauded, but there's still kind of some teething issues, particularly around also, I wouldn't say teething issues, that's the wrong phrase, like some points of friction, right? Particularly users want to be able to, merchants want to be able to reuse existing customers that they've got with Stripe with the pricing table. Right now, that's not possible, but it's something that we're kind of really figuring out a nice way to solve that problem for pricing table merchants. But overall, the developer experience of working with checkout and all these kind of hosted UIs in the Stripe ecosystem, I think is kind of very positive. That's kind of the sentiment we hear from a lot of developers and merchants.
But the other thing I was going to mention too is one of the things that I love about how checkout is evolving is, so obviously there's a lot of power there for developers, and Stripe has always been a developer friendly company, obviously. But then also a lot of these features, you could do that in using just the dashboard, right? Like you can use this in a no code fashion, using not only checkout, but with payment links as well, right? So I think that these are all like really amazing things to do. So things like you showed like the consent forms, the custom calls to action, like things like that, right? Like we can do them in payment links. And so if folks don't want to write code, I mean, I like writing code,
Right.
but like if you don't want to write code, then you do have the option of just going in the dashboard and configuring those settings, and then all is great with the world.
Yeah, that's a good call actually, and something I was going to note, and that is, a lot of these features are kind of possible via payment links as well. See, we can enable terms of service acceptance here, just like that in the payment link. We can also, I believe we can also add custom text, but I think that's API only right now for payment links. It's not enabled in the dashboard flow. Yeah, a lot of these new features that I've talked about today are not only available to kind of code users, but also no code users for payment links, pricing table, obviously. And as well, our customer portal recently became no code. If you missed that, the customer portal where your customers can manage their subscriptions and payment methods. Previously, you had to have like a coded integration for that. You would have to create a session like with checkout. But there's now a no code solution for that, which kind of just involves an email address, and then they will be sent an email link to a kind of short-lived session that they can just click, and there's no actual coded integration required from the merchant.
Right. Awesome. So Jonathan, so for folks that have been wowed by like all the amazing stuff that you showed us so far, like what would you tell folks, like where should they go, right? Like, do we have samples for this inside of the Stripe samples repo, or would you say the best place, I don't feel like you're going to say this, but would you say the best place is go to the docs and then just kind of get your hands on some of these features and try them out?
A lot of these features, I tried to kind of demonstrate in an isolated environment by this kind of little project called Tiny Demos that our colleague Matt had started. And I've helped collaborate and maintain with. So these are just all useful kind of small isolated examples of new features, not just on checkout, but also kind of payment element, other APIs like the search API and stuff like that. A recent example would be the custom text with Stripe checkout. Of course, these are all asleep because it's glitch. But yeah, the idea is that these are kind of glitch instances that you can easily view, try out yourself, and you can actually see the source code. And then you can also remix them as Glitch calls them, spin up your own example and try it out yourself. So this is one I put together for custom text, which is very similar to what I've just shown everybody. But we try to keep on top of these as and when new things launch. So you see this one for the payment element according layout, pricing table, custom call to action, terms of service for checkout as well, local currencies. So what you'll find is if you go to stripe-tinydemos.glitch.com, this is a good place to kind of keep up to date with anything new that's across our payment UIs. You can try it out and actually see how it works rather than just looking at like images in the docs or code in the docs.
Awesome. And so if folks are watching, right, like I've just posted the link at the bottom on the screen right now. So again, it's stripe-tinydemos.glitch.me. And then you can kind of go through and click interactively and try out some of these samples and see how they work for you.
Yeah, so you can use, as I said, you can use this, create a checkout session with the examples there. But with glitches, you can kind of make your own copy of this demo, and that will remix it, add it to your glitch account, and then you can do as you please with it. Add your own kind of Stripe keys, and then actually see how it works in your particular kind of Stripe account.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool, Jonathan. Well, I think that's it, right, for today. But these have been all really great and amazing things.
We have one more thing to cover.
Oh, there's more? I feel like you just had like a Steve Jobs moment. Like there's one more thing. Okay. What do we got?
Yeah, one last thing. Yeah. So this is probably the most exciting thing to launch checkout for a while now. Something that merchants, especially in the European region, have been asking for, and that's for post-payment invoices with checkout. So obviously invoices automatically happen in subscription mode checkout sessions, because we generate an invoice with recurrent subscriptions for every billing interval. But right now, if you're using checkout to process one-time payments in payment mode, then you could have to, and you added like a requirement, like a legal or a business requirement for an invoice for your customers, you would have to handle that manually, and that's a lot of kind of overhead for our merchants to manage themselves, to manually kind of create that invoice, whether it's inside of Stripe or outside of Stripe. It's not a great experience, and we kind of really want to address that for our checkout users. So this is still currently in beta. It's due to launch quite soon, but I'm excited to kind of show it how it works today and show you a quick demo as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think this is really a testament to the checkout team and all the work that they've done, and that this can be enabled with just a single parameter when you create your checkout session. You just need to pass the, why is this on .NET? This must be your browser, Cecil, if it's on .NET.
I've secretly taken over and changed all your things to .NET on your machine.
Yeah. So you can just pass invoice creation hash, and all you actually need to pass is enabled true. There are a bunch of other features which I won't dive into too much, but these basically kind of control additional fields on the invoice if you needed to kind of have that extra level of control. You can pass like tax IDs, a footer to the invoice if you needed to. Otherwise, we will assume the default for the account or the customer. But what happens is you will complete your checkout session as normal. You will complete the payment. Once that payment is successful, your user will be emailed a invoice alongside their receipt, assuming you have emails turned on in your Stripe account. And as well, the invoice will be available in the dashboard for you to view and download as well if you require. So as I said, it's just a simple invoice creation hash, passing the enable param to true. And let's just try this. What you'll notice is the checkout session itself doesn't look any different. It's exactly the same. I'm checking out one time for a £5,000 transaction. Just going to go ahead and complete this. So as that's processing, the payment is successful.
Right.
And what you'll notice is if we go into our dashboard here, dive into payments. This is the most recent payment which is processed. And what you'll notice is the difference here is that between checkout summary here is we have this invoice that's been generated.
Oh, nice.
So it's automatically marked as paid. The actual invoice itself will only generate once the payment is successful. That's particularly pertinent for like async payment methods like ACH debit or SEPA debit or something like that, where the payment isn't immediately successful like a card payment. So what will happen is the invoice creation is delayed until we actually get confirmation that that payment was successful. So they may happen, sometime after the checkout session was completed.
Right.
But what I'll do is I'll just pull down the invoice so you can actually see it. And as you can see, it has details on here. We've got the invoice number, which is all kind of pulled from our account. As I said, I haven't configured any tax IDs or anything on this account. That's why it's kind of bare. But you can see that it carried over the address from the checkout session for our customer.
Right.
And of course, if you're capturing like tax IDs in checkout as well, those will be added to the invoice as well. So it's a really exciting feature, especially for anybody in Europe working on checkout who has felt the pain of not having invoices generated. Really excited for this to ship very soon. Yeah.
That's awesome. I was thinking about this the other day, particularly too, because I was speaking to a customer of ours in person, and they were like, hey, well, right now I am like manually creating receipts. You know what I mean? And for like some of those same reasons, right? Like hey, I bought something and I needed to have it expensed, or I needed to store it for my personal documentation purposes. And when I say my, I mean like for the customers' documentation purposes, right? And it's not always applicable for folks to just go and like screenshot their bank account statement or credit card statement
Yeah.
and have a date there. Like having an official receipt / invoice for a lot of folks for whatever their business processes outside of Stripe is very important.
Yeah, so you can get a receipt today. Like checkout works with receipts as it would, which is like a payment intent receipt.
Yeah.
The difference is that particularly in Europe, there's kind of some strict requirements in certain countries about having an actual invoice with certain invoice details on,
Sure.
shipping address, billing address, customer addresses, tax IDs, that kind of thing. Those
Yeah.
aren't available on the receipts. So what we'd have is we'd have users like creating an invoice
Manually.
after the actual checkout session, and that would like involve, if they're doing that in Stripe, they're like creating an invoice that's paid out of band, and they're having to pass all the line items that correlate to the checkout session, and it's just not a great experience. So I know for sure there's a lot of merchants. I speak to a lot of merchants that are excited for this feature, and a lot of them have been trying it out in the beta as well. But it's going to launch very soon, so excited for people to get this in their hands.
Awesome, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm sure in a couple of months. I'm not saying it's coming out in a couple of months, but I'm sure in a couple of months, I'm sure you're gonna be back with showing off this and like tons of other new features that that folks are gonna be added to checkout. So again, like I really love like the way that this product is going, and I always tell folks, I feel like checkout is one of the easiest ways to get started with payments using Stripe, or get started with payments, period. And then just being able to watch them constantly add new features is definitely very inspiring. So definitely shout out to the folks on the team that's doing a lot of hard work to just, take care of some of the use cases that we care about, and then just continually add value to, to Stripe and Stripe Checkout.
Absolutely. Yeah. This checkout and payment links teams work at such a high velocity. They ship so much awesome stuff, and I'm just really lucky to come here and kind of just show it off and talk about it. So all credit goes to them. Hopefully we'll be back in Q1 with a lot more exciting stuff to show you. I know there's some great stuff in the works, and that's not quite ready to be shown yet, but maybe in Q1 we can get together again.
Awesome. Well, I would love to have you back, man. You're more than welcome to come back as often as you want. Maybe we can make this like a regularly scheduled thing, like
100%.
Jonathan's Power Hour, and we do it like every 3 months or so, every quarter. We just have you come on and just talk about some cool stuff.
Sounds great.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, Jonathan, again, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank everyone that's still here with us. Thank you all for watching. Like you said, make sure you head over to the docs. Showed up a lot of great features today, right? Like custom call to action, custom text inside of your checkout experience, terms of service consent, and then also like those post-payment invoices that you could have triggered and created inside of your checkout session. So head over to the docs, take a look at them, try out the features today. And for the ones that are going to come out later, try them out later whenever they're available, and let us know what you think about it. But until then, I don't think we're streaming next week. I don't believe we are. We're not streaming next week, but we will be back the week after. So hopefully you all join us. And until then, I hope you have a good holidays if you're in the United States and celebrating Thanksgiving. For everyone else, I hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.